from what you've seen about this, because one wonders, are we able to? Do you see? Well, perhaps let's start with the young people who ask a lot of questions. We see them very active on the social media. You see them standing the heat because it's one thing, as you say, to vote every 4 years. It's another thing to, in between those 4 years, to actually ask questions, the right questions too. First, you have to understand how the government works, even if you don't get full grasp of how it works, but how to channel your complaint, because there's a method that is stipulated in this bill,
yes,
how you should write and what happens after 30 days if you don't write, the next step.
yes.
All of those, yes, part of what NUA should do. But do you think that is even, the awareness is growing slowly but surely, or it's just the same old situation?
The awareness has to be built, and then it has to be built in such a way that it gets to a point of momentum. You see, as I said in my earlier interventions, I said that because of our political history, we don't have this tradition of holding people to account. And so this whole new attitude of holding leaders to account will not come to us in a moment of epiphany. We must cultivate this tradition of holding people to account. I wanted to raise a question with the honorable member of the House concerning the question of domesticating the law at the state levels. You see, there was a case, you know, in a state, and I think up to even here in Lagos State, where a certain NGO wanted an information from the state government under the FOI Act, and the only contention by the state council was that law has not been domesticated in the state. So this is a very fundamental dimension as well, because it does not help the cause of transparency if states refuse to domesticate the law, citing it simply as a federal legislation. So these are issues that we need to tackle. If states cannot reveal information, we need to be very troubled and concerned about that. States are seen as centers of development. Some of the states in Nigeria run budgets that are in excess of the budgets of many African countries. They get billions of naira from the federation account every month. They generate so much revenue, running into billions of naira every month in each state. They also get a lot of funding support from federal from international agencies such as the UNDP and other UN agencies, and even the African Union and countries such as the US and Britain. So they get a lot of money, and they following the removal of subsidy in January, a totally unforeseen but new trajectory of funds now go to the states. So these states really have a lot of money that they spend. We need to make sure that in as much as they have such extensive financial resources at their disposal, so too should they be more accountable. To simply say that this is the FOI Act is a federal legislation and therefore does not apply to processes of accountability and transparency in the state is not something that we should encourage. And I think we need to debate that and make sure that we pursue the cause of transparency at all levels, including the local government levels.
Let us also talk about, you know, the National Assembly pursuing this particular agenda of letting Nigerians know the usefulness of this bill. Would you, or this act, beg your pardon.
Yes.
Would you also support that? I mean, she said that it's not exactly their function, it's not primarily their function. Do you think that they should be involved in also in the campaign of letting what the FOI Act can do?
I think that any campaign that raises public awareness is a good thing. I think that they are first of all citizens before they are legislators. Some of them won't be legislators in another 4 years. They will become the citizens that they were before they held public office. I think that it is a responsibility of every person, whether elected or not elected, whether you hold public office or not. So the matter of being their primary responsibility is just a concessional distraction. The most important thing is that we should see this as part of our responsibilities as citizens to hold those who are very active and hold public finances to account. It's something that we have no choice but do, because look at the kind of depressing corruption index that Nigeria is known for. it's difficult to imagine a country as corrupt as Nigeria. It's very difficult indeed. Yeah. We know that there are people in government, for instance, who say, well, the fight against corruption is being waged and that is being waged successfully. If you think that corruption is being tackled in Nigeria as we know it now, you must be living outside the country or you are simply in denial. There is a strong perception that corruption has taken up a new prominence. And so we need people to activate this kind of legislation to hold people.
But some people say the perception and reality are two different things, and that that people continue to perceive when something is not like that.
No, that's not true. Perception doesn't come from a well of water. Perception forms around the kind of realities that we experience. If you live in Nigeria, you will know from experience, not just perception, from experience, that there is extensive corruption in this country. It is this experience that informs your perception. Perception doesn't just come as a dream. It's something that we see, it's something that people tell us, it's something that we witness all around us, something that sometimes affects us directly or indirectly. Over time, a certain kind of notion is formed that corruption seems to thrive. Look, let me tell you, for the first time in this country, we have a situation where when people are invited by the EFCC, they see it as a new social credential now. They tip off the media, the people go, they choose their clothing very well. They see invitation by the EFCC as the new status in town because they realize that the EFCC has become just another governmental ornamentation. Nobody really fights corruption. So people see all of these things, and it is what they see and what they feel and what they experience that generates this perception that there is a culture of impunity that is setting in and that corruption is not being fought. That is one thing. Now, the second way of analyzing corruption is hard data. So if you want to know whether corruption is actually being fought or whether the fight against corruption is being won, you need to ask how many people over the past 1 year have been prosecuted, have been arrested, are now resting in jail. When you have this kind of statistics, you can have a statistical basis to argue one way or the other whether corruption is being fought or not. So perceptions don't just come in the air. It's something that people experience.
Well, Honorable Apike Dabirerewa is back on the line to respond to the question of domesticating the FOI Act. Yes, because as it stands now, the FOI Act can only be, you can only access information at the federal level and perhaps public institutions because information is on the concurrent list in the 1999 Constitution. What can you tell us? Is the House of Reps or House of Assembly or National Assembly doing anything about this, and can they do anything about this?
Well, again, I think we have a few cases like that also being tested in the court. Now, 2 states have passed the bill. Ekiti has domesticated the FOI Act. Ekiti is the first state to pass the FOI law. Lagos State is going through second reading. Edo State is almost at the final stage. And I think 1 or 2 states have just started. So that really, we cannot take control over states. If the states decide that they don't want to domesticate it, they want to pass their own version, I don't think we have power over that. However, it's one of the things we can test. And I think 1 or 2 people have gone to court in that regard. But I believe that if states really want an FOI, they will just go ahead and pass their version if that is what they want, which is what is happening at this point in time. And I also have another response to Mr. George. What we say is not our primary responsibility. What we say is that we have passed the law. We've empowered, we've given power to Nigerians to take information. That we even set up a committee to follow it up, shows how serious we are about it. And we should go beyond talking and doing and acting as Nigerians. Even Mr. George himself can get up after all this and make use of the FOI Act. We should get up and take action. Corruption is not, I'm sure, not serious about fighting corruption. If we are, we can all do better collectively. We should take action, not just talk about it, but do it. And I believe the House of Representatives, the National Assembly has empowered Nigerians by giving Nigerians this bill. It was a difficult journey. It took 10 years. It wasn't easy getting this bill passed. We knew the opposition was still, but we came together as an assembly and said, Nigerians must have this. So I believe that we should go beyond talking and take action as Nigerians.